Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning. My name is Samantha Becotte. I'm the president of the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation, and I'm joining you from Treaty 6 territory in the traditional lands of the Métis. First, I would like to share my thanks to the Minister of Education for the MOU that was provided to STF as well as SSBA. There have been several back and forth conversations to try and find a solution that works for all parties to this agreement. And even as early as this morning, we have made the commitment to work over the weekend to try and move this process forward. And I'd like to add that I truly feel that this is as close as we have been within the process to getting back to the table. So we're hopeful, but also cautious with that in ensuring that it is something that is going to work for teachers and most importantly, students. It is a little frustrating within the process to have additional conversations that are happening within the work that's being done to move bargaining forward. It's disappointing with these additional actions or announcements, as it really only serves to distract from that bargaining process and doesn't help in providing a solution and a path forward. As I've said before, though I am hopeful that over the weekend we can get us to a point where we'll be able to return to the table and negotiate an agreement that both addresses teachers' working conditions as well as their compensation. But as we have always said, we deal in facts, and so I wanted to take the opportunity to address a few of the things that we heard from the Minister of Education, as well as the president of the Saskatchewan School Boards Association this morning. I know that there was a lot of things shared and a lot of comments that are a little bit misleading or more than misleading in some cases. So I'll address a few of them, and I know our news release that's coming a little bit later will have additional information as well as opportunity to answer any questions that you may have at the end. So first and foremost, the minister's comments that we have heard before that the STF is targeting kids within our actions. I have acknowledged that any job action that we take is going to have an impact on students and their families. But we should have never been forced to take these steps or have had any sanction action. The conversations that are occurring now should have been happening over the last 10 months. And if they had happened 6 months ago or back in May when we started negotiations, we would have never come to this point of needing sanction action. It could have all been avoided. And even with the conversation around ensuring graduation is going to happen, providing additional resources, whether it is people or facilities, to ensuring those special events happen, which teachers want to ensure those events are happening. The minister could be directing those resources and that time and energy to coming to an agreement with teachers. So the minister and the SSBA have continued to delay this process at every opportunity they can. There is a very simple way to ensure that there is no further job action that would interrupt both the learning that happens within schools and those other important events that teachers support through their voluntary services, and that is to negotiate an agreement with teachers. Second, the president of the SSBA claims that school divisions have policies and practices that are aimed at addressing classroom complexity. If she thinks that school boards are actualizing those plans and they're sufficiently able to address the issues around classroom complexity, I have some significant concerns about her understanding of the challenges and the realities in schools across the province. These policies that are made by school divisions are aspirational documents. So it's something that we hope to achieve. They're not binding documents. There is nothing in there that ensures that those are the conditions that we have in schools. They do not ensure that there's predictable and sustainable funding or a genuine investment in education that will provide improvements to the experiences of students in our classrooms. Both of those are things that the president of the SSBA has previously advocated for. SSBA's record of dealing with these issues are hollow. They have been ineffective at finding solutions to the growing challenges. And working towards ensuring high quality education can be delivered by teachers to all students across the province. Teachers have brought these issues forward for the last 7 years through collective bargaining, and they continue to be pushed off to committees that are ineffective at finding real solutions and tangible improvements that can be made within the education sector. The next thing I wanted to address is the continued reference of concerns around BC's example in addressing classroom complexity and class size within their collective agreement. We have never proposed the BC model as a solution. We want to find, and we continue to say, we want to find a solution that works in Saskatchewan rather than continuing to instill fear of models that aren't being discussed. I would encourage the Minister of Education and the President of the SSBA to work with teachers on how a solution in contract can be found that works in Saskatchewan. And I agree with a comment the Minister has made before. This needs to work for government, it needs to work for school boards, it needs to work for teachers, but most importantly, it needs to work for kids. The accountability framework that has been proposed by government is a good thing, and I thank the Minister for Education for coming up with a great start to help us move towards a solution. We're happy to hear the Minister of Education acknowledge that teacher voice is an important piece to the decision-making process. Teachers and the STF are not looking to take away any management rights, but SSBA in the role of management have been effective at being able to ensure their employees have a safe working environment and that their employees, teachers, have the supports and resources that are necessary to deliver that high quality education that everyone across Saskatchewan deserves. The president of the SSBA talks about her concern for the words compliance and dispute being used within education. And I'm not sure where this fear is coming from. School boards should be compliant in ensuring that restricted funds are directed to supports for students. They should have no issue with being transparent in their reporting on those decisions or on any decisions that they're making. And ideally, there shouldn't be need for a dispute. But if school boards are using funds that are intended to support students instead of using them toward their intended use of supporting students, we know we have heard of hiring additional division administrators or paying down division debt. We want to ensure that there is a dispute mechanism. Otherwise, that word accountability within the accountability framework isn't truly there. Accountability is the willingness to accept responsibility for the decisions that are being made. And there should be no issue with there being the words compliance or dispute within that accountability framework. If the president of the SSBA doesn't think boards should be compliant to their own policies and decision-making, or that there shouldn't be a way to resolve an issue with compliance, that's a huge red flag in my mind. I know, as I said, there were many other points that were raised in the media conference with the Minister of Education and the President of the SSBA, but I'd like to open it up to questions rather than continuing to fact check or correct any information or misinformation that was within their conference. So I see Alec.
Hi, Samantha.
Hi.
I guess just first thing here, this MOU with respect to the accountability framework or what have you, I was just hoping to get your initial thoughts on that. It sounds like it was sent out on Monday, and I think that on Wednesday you made some comments about how, you know, this was sort of an encouraging step in you know, this entire bargaining process. But I'd just like to hear from you again today in face of some of the comments made this morning. What your thought is about that framework. And I apologize if I'm getting you to retread territory. I got here late. My error. My bad.
All good. I'm happy to answer your question. I am still cautiously optimistic, and the Federation is still cautiously optimistic that the MOU will provide us a path back to the bargaining table. We are engaging in back and forth conversations with the ministry to ensure that what is put forward in that MOU is something that is going to work for teachers, government, and school boards. But like I said, most importantly, it needs to work for students and ensure that the experiences that they are having in our classrooms start to improve and that we're able to deliver a better quality education to all of the nearly 200,000 students in the schools across the province. So hopeful that it is going to be able to provide us with that path forward. Appreciate the opportunity to be able to have a back and forth conversation with government about what that looks like. That's really what negotiation should be. We should have been having these back and forth conversations anytime over the last 10 months, and we would have potentially been able to avoid any sanction action. Disappointing that it's been delayed until now the end of March, but like I said, happy that we're able to hopefully get back to the negotiating table and find an agreement that is going to support teachers in classrooms.
Forward a way to get back to the bargaining table if this exists in the form of an MOU, or does this have to be encompassed within the CBA for you and for the STF?
I missed the start of your question, but I think I caught what you were getting at. We need a way for it to be binding, and that's the biggest thing within this, is that a binding agreement, there needs to be a way to have a dispute resolution. If one party of the agreement doesn't uphold the actions that were agreed to, if there's no dispute resolution, then it's no more than a pinky promise made amongst two people out on a school playground. It's not a true agreement in what we need to see to start seeing improvements within our schools across the province.
Thank you. And last one for me, and then I'll hand it over to people. We also heard mention that graduations will go ahead. We didn't quite get a firm answer on what that looks like or how. I'm just curious about what that sort of rhetoric means in the process of bargaining, where we're having the government preempt these hypothetical job actions that might affect graduation.
Yeah, and like I said, those comments are a little bit distracting from the process we should be focusing on. We should be putting all of our energy, and teachers are putting all of our energy towards getting to an agreement so that we don't have to have further job action that interrupts student learning or disrupts all of those or any of the extra activities that teachers provide within the school community to give students that well-rounded experience within their schools. So I would hope that the Minister of Education and the President of the SSBA start looking at how can we find a solution to the dispute that's occurring within negotiations, rather than worry about future job action. If we can find a resolution, then there won't be any further job action, and that should be everyone's priority. Rody?
Hey, thanks for doing this. So the government or the SSBA has been working pretty closely with the government over this whole kind of bargaining process. I know in the past the SSBA has had a pretty similar message that the STF has kind of come out with, just in terms of more funding for education and stuff. Has there been kind of more similar discussions with the SSBA on any of these topics?
Well, government and SSBA sit together as a bargaining unit in that contract negotiation. So it's understandable why they would be in regular conversations with each other. That said, it is very disappointing to hear the president of the SSBA come out with comments that she came out today. Again, like I said, they're so misleading and completely inaccurate to the realities that not just teachers and students are facing in the classroom, but school boards themselves are facing in the challenges that come in the wake of budgets that don't meet enrollment growth, that don't account for inflation. Year after year, we hear school divisions talk about their challenges in meeting the needs of students with budgets that are so constrained. And even with the additional funding that has come out this year, there are still school divisions that are talking about shortfalls and potentially having to make cuts. I mean, $19.5 million when it's spread across 27 school divisions isn't going to provide a significant increase to the supports that are available per student when you start factoring in things like inflation and things like enrollment growth. So it is concerning to see that there isn't an independence that still occurs between SSBA and their provincial leadership from government. They should still be able to have that independent voice and advocate for what's best for not just themselves as a local board, but their division and the students that they support.
Perfect. And last one for me. So with Cockrell saying that he's going to be putting in resources to make sure graduation will go ahead, has the STF been thinking about taking away graduation resources as a form of job action?
Well, throughout all of this, we've talked about a long-term and a short-term strategy when it comes to sanctions. Our ideal is that we don't have any sanctions at all. We are doing everything that we can to have sanctions end. And so the minister's comments about putting resources, whether it's financial resource or people resources and supports towards ensuring graduation, or the facilities in order to ensure that there's a graduation, they should be putting that time and energy and resources into our negotiations process. And then that will ensure that there are graduation ceremonies that occur. And I mean, that in itself acknowledges the significant time and energy that teachers put towards graduation ceremonies to have them occur. Teachers are volunteering their time in order to have graduation ceremonies in our high schools across the province. And so why not negotiate so that their working conditions are better, so that we're getting students the supports that they need in order to graduate. And then teachers will likely continue to volunteer their time and provide that extra experience that students have within the classrooms, within their school communities. Jeremy?
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering, what is encouraging to you in this MOU?
Well, as much as I'd love to get into some of the details about what might be included within the MOU, there's still back and forth conversation that's occurring. And I know some of the public conversations that have happened in the past around negotiations have been a little bit distracting and don't help us get towards a solution. So some of the comments that the minister has made, talking about the need for teacher voice to be included within the decision-making process, that is important to have. It acknowledges as well that guaranteed funding that is going to occur over the term of whatever the agreement ends up being. That is encouraging to see. It's not ideal. It's not going to be a perfect solution, but it is a step forward and something that we'll be able to continue to build on in future years and future rounds of negotiations. And this is work that should be happening every year. It shouldn't just be on the negotiation cycle, but on the negotiation cycle, it does provide that regular interval of when we can evaluate and adjust if needed on what needs to change going forward.
Right. And like, what's missing in your mind in this MOU?
Well, as I said before, accountability is in ensuring that you are responsible for the decisions that are being made. So if decisions that are reported at the end of the school year, at the end of the budgeting process, show that school boards didn't put restricted funds towards supports for students in the classroom and instead hired an additional superintendent, or maybe did a renovation to their division office with those funds. We want to ensure that there's a mechanism to correct that decision. Restricted funds should be restricted to what their purpose is. And if school divisions aren't compliant to that, then there should be a dispute resolution to ensure that there's a way to correct that decision in some way.
Okay, and last one for me. When do you think you're going to get back to the negotiating table?
I'd love to say that we'll be back to the negotiating table as early as next week. It completely depends on on that back and forth conversation that's happening around the MOU. We appreciate that the government has been willing to have a bit of a back and forth conversation to try and get this to a place that works for teachers and government and school boards. But as I said, most importantly, it needs to work for students in the end of this. So as quick as we can make that work happen, and as I said, we committed to working over the weekend as well, the holiday weekend that's coming up. We want to get back to the table as soon as possible so that we can get to an agreement and we can provide stability within classrooms and hopefully start to provide a better experience with a renewed investment that comes. Brianna?
Yes. So at this moment in time, I know you just mentioned you would go back to the table next week, but how close do you think are you to coming to a deal?
Well, again, it's hard to say because we don't know the conversations that are going to occur at the table. We have heard comments from the minister where he believes that we're closer on many of the items than we have been in the past. And that's how negotiations should be. There should be a back and forth where those goalposts continue to move closer and closer until both sides are satisfied with the result, or at least equally disappointed in what the result is. But we want to work and we want to have that back and forth conversation so that we can get to an agreement as soon as possible. I'm hopeful that that will occur quickly, but part of that is up to the GTBC. And the last time we went to the table in February, they delayed the start time, and then they refused to come back to the table on our second day. So we are going to continue to do everything that we can to get us to an agreement as quickly as possible, but we aren't the only people participating in that process.
And to follow up, I know you've been having these conversations, but are there any conversations that you're having with parents, especially in light of recent cancellations of events as well as, their trips to Europe?
Yeah, I've been talking with parents and students who have called into the Federation, both in support of what the teachers are fighting to do despite disruptions that they are experiencing, and then as well, some who are feeling more frustrated about the impact that they are experiencing with sanctions. Ideally, we don't have sanctions. Like I said, we should have been able to have these conversations 6 months ago before we even had a sanctions vote. And that would have provided us with a path forward to be able to negotiate an agreement, even without a dispute resolution process. Government at every opportunity, as well as the SSBA leadership, have delayed this process and really given teachers no other option to move it forward but to take additional sanction action. And that's why I've been saying is that while they're making announcements about ensuring graduation happens, there is one way to ensure that there are no future job actions, and that is to come to the table in good faith, work with teachers to find a resolution to the negotiations process. And like I continue to say, I agree with the minister. That needs to work for government and school boards. It needs to work for Saskatchewan taxpayers. It needs to work for teachers, but most importantly, it needs to work for our kids. And by and large, what we're hearing from members of the public is that the experiences that their children or their grandchildren or their nieces or nephews are having in our schools across the province is not good enough. And we need government to work with us to ensure that teachers can deliver that exceptional education that every single kid deserves to see in their schools.
So I'm curious. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I see a question in the chat as well. So someone doesn't have a mic. Do you think teachers are losing support from parents and students? I've heard some Europe trips are being canceled, hoopla as well, which is causing some frustration, especially in rural settings. So like I said, we have had conversations with both parents and students acknowledging that sanctions that we have had an impact on students and have resulted in the loss of some of those extra activities that teachers are volunteering their time to provide. No one wants to be making those decisions. I for one, for sure, and I know everyone else on the team would much rather be making a decision or making an action saying that we're able to work with government and move this negotiations process forward. That's the announcement that everyone wants to make. But we need everyone within the process willing to acknowledge that there are significant problems that students and teachers are facing within classrooms, and to work together to find solutions that are binding. And that is the key to all of this, is that we need to know that over the next 3 years, that we've really already lost 1 year of what would be in a contract, because we're almost a year out from where our contract expires, and that's a year of lost improvements that kids could have had if negotiations had gone quicker. But that's the core of what we're looking for, is we want to know that there's accountability to the decisions, and that there's a dispute process if someone within the agreement doesn't uphold what they have committed to within whatever the agreement ends up being made. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. Like I said, I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. I am hopeful that we will be able to make that positive announcement, and I'm hopeful and thankful for the offers that have been extended from the Minister of Education and his work in trying to find a solution and working with teachers, acknowledging the challenges that students and teachers face, acknowledging the important voice that teachers provide as frontline workers who are working with students day in and day out about the challenges that they experience, providing that voice to decision-making processes. But I continue to be extremely disappointed to hear from the president of the SSBA that she doesn't think that school divisions should be accountable. And accountability includes that compliance to upholding decisions around funding to ensure that funds are being directed to classrooms to support our students. And then if they're not being compliant to that there is a dispute process to ensure that there's a correction and that students are receiving the supports that are being put out and provided by the government of Saskatchewan. We have been fighting to ensure that kids are getting their needs met. School divisions and school boards should have no problem in that challenge as well. We have talked about the government needing to address the investment, but school boards also need to be accountable to the decisions that they're making. So thank you so much for joining us here today, and I hope you have a great long weekend coming up and everyone is able to get some rest in. I know, like I said, we'll be working, but hopefully we have more positive news or some positive news coming back next week.